and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Alzheimer Speaks. I am your host, Lori LeBay, and today we're going to be having a wonderful conversation with a son who cared for his mother, who has authored the book Spin Cycle, Notes from a Reluctant Caregiver. And I don't think there's too many caregivers that aren't reluctant on this journey. His whole goal is to make you not feel so alone. And before I introduce you to him, I just want to do a couple of shout outs. One, I encourage people to go to alzheimerspeaks.com. A lot of people think we just do the radio show here, but we have all kinds of resources for you, from a book to tips and tools and different types of programs you can get involved in. Or if you're looking for a speaker or trainer, I also do that. Also, our sister company, DementiaMap.com, has resources all around the world. And so if you provide a resource, service, product, or tool regarding dementia, we'd love to have you sign up and become part of that movement. We are all about being givers of hope and sharing information. So if you'd like a tour of that, just reach out to me. I will have all the information in the show notes on that as well. Well, everyone, we are just thrilled to have Alfredo back with us. He was on not too long ago on an open mic session, and he's just one of those individuals that you feel so comfortable with. You could talk with him all day long. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation about his book called Spin Cycle, Notes from a Reluctant Caregiver. And, you know, I don't think there's too many out there that aren't reluctant when they kind of get pushed into caring for somebody with dementia. It's not something we kind of sign up for or wish for, put on our bucket list. It just kind of happens. So, Alfredo, I'm going to have you go ahead and introduce yourself, if you don't mind, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me back on again, Lori. As I think I told you last time, ever since the experiences with my mom beginning about 5 or 6 years ago, I've become sort of a bit of a zealot about trying to get the word out there, have people not feel so alone. So just real quick, the bullet points about me. I am a screenwriter. I am a novelist. I co-own a cocktail bar in downtown Oakland. I used to be an architect, still love architecture, just don't feel like practicing it. I have 2 sons who are grown in their 20s, 2 corgis, one of whom you might hear from during this interview. George is the talkative one. And of course, I'm the son to my mom, Lisa Carter, a wonderful single mom, first-generation immigrant, kick-ass, amazing person. And about 5 or 6 years ago, something started changing with mom. The little things, being able to understand her own calendar, being able to understand which meds to take. All of this came on the heels of the death of my stepdad, her husband of 27 years. And it peeled open the lid for me of what was really going on. I thought, oh, it's real simple in my mind. My mom is fine and healthy. My stepdad is sick. He had kidney failure. But I realized after he had passed, and I could see the signs with my mom of dementia worsening, the panicked visits to 911, knocking on neighbors' doors, asking if she could spend the night because she just felt odd. The obsessing over meds, worry that she didn't take them right, all the things that were normal before that I now, in retrospect, think probably my stepdad was helping with. All of that kind of vanished. So that thrust me into the situation where, yeah, of course, I'm taking care of my mom, stepdad's passed. And I was so, and this is the part where I'm ashamed and embarrassed to say it, but I was so I was not compassionate. I was not sweet and kind as I saw my mom change. I didn't like that she was changing. I knew a mom for 50 years who was a badass, who didn't need any help. I mean, she took belly dancing lessons in the 70s. She went on Sierra Club hikes. She worked an extra job to put me through private school. I mean, she's a hero, right? And I didn't like the changes and I didn't handle it well. And over the years, as I understood what was going on, I realized, man, I just wish there had been something out there that was a source of comfort or just to know I'm not alone. So it really kind of compelled me to write this novel, Spin Cycle, Notes from a Reluctant Caregiver. Like you just said, I think probably I'm glad to know that I'm not the only reluctant one. We don't all plunge into this with, flowers in the air and, open, warm hugs necessarily. So I wanted this book to be a comfort for people so they would read it and resonate and be like, oh, that character is saying or feeling exactly what I would do. And that's how I reacted. And I don't feel great about it. And what do they do in the story to resolve those feelings? And where does the protagonist go? What's his evolution like? And can I maybe even get a little bit of inspiration from that? So if this book makes one person say, oh, gosh, I'm not alone. I'm not the worst adult child out there caring for my parent or somebody, then I've done my job. So that's how I came to it. I was really inspired by my mom and wanting to bring emotional comfort to people who are in my shoes, because I have a feeling there's a lot more out there than I ever realized.
Oh, every single one needs comfort. I at one time or another, I mean, even when we feel like we're handling it, that's only going to last so long, and then something else is going to happen, and it's going to, put us off center, and we're going to be off balance, and feel reluctant, feel frustrated, feel angry, feel sad, all of those emotions that we typically don't like to share with other people that we're going through, because there is the shame. You think you should be able to handle this, everyone else is doing this, why can't I do this? And it's like, well, no, if you really talk to them, they're going through all of these things too. And even, us as professionals out there will be the first to admit we're never going to know it all. There's always going to be something new to learn. This is a true trial and error game. And, it really is about, to me, I think one of the most comforting things is hearing different people's voices and perspectives, because, I could listen to 15 people all say the same thing, but I might resonate with two or three of them, that just goes, I can do it. And it might have just been their tone of voice. It might have been that they were saying the exact same words, but it's just how they came off. Or it might have been the 15th person that was just like, okay, you idiots, how many people do you have to hear from? And my being finally said, okay, I guess I better try this. It might be something like that as well. So
Sure.
it's really important, I think, for people to share their stories. And, your book, the way you just referenced it, it's like maybe someone will learn from this character, in here is everything. Just to clarify for our audience, is this a mixture of your life and other kind of story points that you put in?
Yeah, so a lot of the incidents in it some of them are taken from my mom and I. So the whole process of, for example, of my mom losing her driver's license and how that went down and how I felt responsible for it, because I was on the call with the DMV guy, and I wish I had been able to. My mom was able to repass the written test, but not the driver's test. And I always wondered, should we have practiced just 4 hours more in the parking lot of driving before that test? In the end, I don't know that it would have made a difference, but the regardless of the specific anecdote or what happens, the underlying feeling of, did I do enough? Am I being sweet now? Am I being kind now? Was it reckless of me to think I could send my mom a Lyft or an Uber and not realize she might just climb into a stranger's car, which my mom has done. And the stranger was luckily a kind man. He took her back to the bank where she had been. Then the bank called me and said, hey, Alfredo, my name is Chato in the family, but Alfredo, we have your mom, she's crying. And then my mom got on the phone and was saying that they were holding her there against her will, and they were just trying to protect her. But I felt so guilty because I was the one who set up the lift for her from abroad. I was not there, so I had to do it from a distance. And I thought, in the back of my mind, this is dicey. This is questionable as to whether mom can handle it. But it was, for me, I felt like oh, I'm doing this because it's the easiest thing for me to do right now. So then you get those feelings on top of everything. But in terms of the book, the reason I wrote fiction, the reason I didn't do this as a memoir is there are so many more facets I want to explore about the story and about this character than I could do alone. So the character is a high school math teacher. He's at the end of his rope, dealing with his wife left him, his 18-year-old son barely talks to him. Some of it is grounded in the fact that he's become just insufferable because of how he's handling his mom's dementia. It's just taking everything away from him, and he's always moody and short-tempered, quiet or loud. It's also having these kind of ripple effects in his home life. So being a teacher, he decides, well, I'm going to open up APPA, which is Adults Patiently Parenting Adults Academy. The accent is on the word patiently, of course. So he opens this kind of storefront, and you could barely call it a school. It's really more of a support group for a bunch of lost souls. But 9 people show up, and those 9 people over the course of the book share their views and their experiences. Some are in their 20s, some are in their 60s. They're all over the map, and they're all experiencing some form of caregiver burnout, blindsidedness, overload. And then in the second half of the book, without giving anything away, the stakes really rise and escalate for the protagonist, and you understand some of what he was doing in the school had to do with kind of a sort of a secret he's keeping, and one of his main students also has a big secret she's keeping. So family secrets is one of the sub themes of the book. The umbrella of the book is compassion and trying to find it once you've lost it and trying to get back there. So the feelings are all rooted in things I had with my mom, but the specifics and the characters, and that's me as a writer fleshing things out in a way that I think is hopefully a satisfying and compelling read.
Okay, great. That's helpful because there's so many different types of books that are out there, and it sounds like super interesting. And I love your underlying themes of the family secrets. I mean, I don't know of one family that doesn't have secrets, and at different levels, different people in the family have different secrets as well. So it's that's interesting. And then the whole compassion theme, the when you're talking about the car, it's like, yeah, you can say it was easiest, but you can also say, and she used to be able to do that. That wasn't a difficult thing, and it's always safe until it's not safe, and we don't know where those lines are until kind of a crisis happens or something flashing. Even if nobody gets hurt, you're just like, okay, we're past that now. We got to handle this some other way. But I think that's how most families handle those situations, because if you don't, then you kind of put them in a cage, and then you're taking the risk of just living life away and the purpose and engagement. And then that's a whole nother level of, how am I doing this? Yeah, they might be safe, but are they happy? Are they, still able to live life? Driving the car, doing the more practice. The thing that's a lot of times hard, and I don't know how her test was there, but I know in Minnesota, they can't even use their own car. So then you got to get into somebody else's car. And I mean, I hate it when I travel. It's like a 20-minute orientation when I get a rental car. Like, okay,
Yeah.
do I have a key? Do I push a button? Does it, what does it do? How do I just flip the lid in the back to get the back end to open? I mean, or the windshield wipers going and the lights, all of that stuff is different in those
Right.
things. And so, and so for someone who doesn't have all their cognitive abilities, it becomes even worse. I mean, and I like to think I have most of my cognitive abilities, and it still throws me for a loop with all this stuff, because it's like I drive an older car, and I'll drive it till it dies. That's just who I am.
Yeah,
And
it's funny. It's funny you say that, because I'm the same way. In the rental lot, it's a good 10 minutes before I even pull out of the parking space. I got to adjust the seat. Where's the hazard? Move the steering wheel up and down. How do I work the radio? How do I work the heater and the air conditioner? So with my mom, I mean, God bless the guy who was giving her the test. This was her third test that she was taking, so she was allowed to take 3 tests, which was already pretty tolerant of the DMV. And she was in her own car, but
Mhm.
we asked her to turn on the blinkers for right or left. Immediately just panic. She had been able to handle the written test. Maybe it was, I don't know what this, who knows? I can't really speculate, but she was able to handle that and pass it. So she was able to step to the driving. It all kind of collapsed. But what I wanted to mention were two things you touched on in the last things you were saying. The first is on family secrets. I just want to go back to that for a second, because I think this is something I've kind of discovered in my own life. And this is really regardless of the subject matter of the book. The book happens to be about, your relationship between a son and the mother and another woman and her mother and the secrets that come out. But it's a general experience I've had that when I've had something, first of all, for people who don't know me, I'm kind of a type A, I'm a Virgo. So I like to always appear perfect, like nothing is ever wrong. That's just kind of what I do. And it's not healthy. My therapist has pointed it out many times. But anyway, when I have had something that's been really making me crazy, or I'm just going in anxiety spirals or feeling worried and kind of embarrassed about it, like it's not even a big deal. When I have ever shared that with a friend, nobody ever goes, "Oh, that's so pathetic." It always brings you closer. I've yet to be in a situation where when you open up and you're a little vulnerable about something, that it doesn't actually connect you more to that person. Why? Because they're the same as you. They also have their secrets and their stuff. So I've learned, bit by bit to be a little bit more open about secrets, and putting some daylight on them usually kills their power, I find. And so that was part of what I want to say about the book. And then what you were saying was kind of hopping now to the situation of mom. And you mentioned there's this total struggle. We've all been there who've been there, which is preserving their independence, their dignity, their freedom, and at the same time, making sure they're truly safe. And it's an agonizing choice sometimes. So for example, my mom, her heyday was the mid 60s, and she was always she dressed really well, kind of a girly girl. Like her icon would be Jackie O, white gloves, the pillbox hat. My mom, I've seen pictures, she was super stylish. So flash to today, she loves these kind of wedge shoes. She's always worn. She's worn them since I was a kid. But there was a time, I'll never forget. It was a Friday. I got a call in the morning saying mom had fallen. I rushed over. She's in an assisted living place. Prior to that, I both lived with her for a time. And then she also lived with my girlfriend and I until, again, I was trying to give her as much freedom as possible until that was not going to be workable anymore. Anyway, so I go over there and I can clearly see one wrist is broken. I mean, it's just swollen and red and shiny and but she could still kind of make it. And in that moment, I thought, it's the shoes. I've seen her in those shoes. I've seen her kind of wobble. And I'm like, you knew better. Why didn't you go? Because this is what I ended up doing. Why didn't you go to Target and get those nice flat plastic sandals that are wide enough for your mom's wide feet? We both have wide feet. And then it would be more stable, but I didn't do it. And then on a Sunday, she was still in those shoes with one wrist down. 2 days later, she fell, broke the second wrist. So now she's in a nursing facility, a skilled nursing facility for about 10 or 11 days. And I can't tell you the guilt I felt. Like I knew better. I saw her wobble in those shoes. Now this anecdote does make it into the book with some embellishment, but I mean, that to me was a classic example of like, I'm trying to do right by my mom. I want her to keep as much of her identity as possible, but now, unfortunately, it did take 2 broken wrists for me to kind of let go of trying to help her and being like, "Nope, mom, I'm taking those." I basically took all those shoes, put them in a garbage bag, and they're probably still in the trunk of my car. I just was like, "Nope, this is not going to work anymore." And I feel like I had to be the bad guy, bring the hammer down.
Yep. Well, and there's that in between where you could have bought the shoes and still left the other ones and said, let's just try these. And they refuse, I mean, there's so many different ways that could happen. Or all of a sudden they're barefoot, or they have their friend take them to go buy new shoes. And I mean, they have all their workarounds,
Yeah, right. There are workarounds. And my mom's clever.
Yeah, with all of that. So, we can only do the best we can. And there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, you're trying to do the best you can to protect and honor, and those are difficult decisions. And sometimes it just gets to a safety issue where, or a lot of times it's medical, where someone, okay, you're physically hurt. Okay, that's the line in the sand now, Yeah. And then that's when the change happens. But even I know for many people, including myself, when you draw that line in the sand, it's not a comfortable line, even for a care partner. I mean, you know it's the right thing, but you know that they're struggling with it, and you see that and you feel that, or anyways, I did, and so life's not easy, and it wasn't before dementia. Dementia doesn't make it any easier.
Right. And I just to kind of to put, and this is a little bit, I think, of the evolution of my, yeah, but by the way, it's all whack-a-mole and putting out fires. That's for sure. And so you have to, for a person like me who likes to have fixed solutions, like, oh, I came up with a great med checklist, or I came up with the right pair of shoes. I know now that I can't sort of say, okay, problem solved forever. No, things might change. So now, for example, my mom, post the broken wrists, uses a walker, and that was a adjustment she didn't want to make. And I'm trying to think, yeah, if someone took away my permission to drive a car, then I've got to move into a new place I'm not familiar with. Okay, and now I've got to use this. I mean, I can, it's dementia or not, all that is traumatic. So, but I want to share this one kind of what I think is, it's a small thing, but it was to me, it was a big triumph. So again, my mom's really stylish. So we had to kind of negotiate. So yes, the walker, but she didn't like the green tennis balls that are on the front two legs. She thought they were tacky because my mom's stylish. So I go on Amazon, and there are black tennis balls that are pre-cut to put on the bottom. And I'm like, this, and she loved them. So now she can use her thing and be like, oh, at least I look cuter or better than so-and-so down the hall because I've got my black. So that was a case where I felt like scrambling and pivoting and always basically trying to figure it out on the fly. We actually came to a kind of a fairly happy place. So now when I come with the replacement tennis balls, she's okay with it. So that's an example, again, small, but I think it kind of stands in for this notion of trying to maybe compromise and pivot when you need to.
Well, and if there's a lot of people with walkers, it's like, which one's your mom's, because it's different. There's
also that, right?
No ifs, ands, or buts on that. Well, wonderful. Now, my understanding is you found ways to better communicate with your loved one. Can you give us some tips on approaches that you used for that?
Sure. So as a writer, I like to talk, and I like wordplay is important to me. Conversations are important to me. And one of the biggest challenges was the way I used to tease my mom, the humor. Like, so for example, in earlier years, my mom is this almost, in some ways, kind of a caricature version of a little old German lady who keeps the house absolutely spotless. I mean, she might not be able to remember that she put her groceries away in the bedroom and not the kitchen, but if there's a single mote of dust floating in the air that I could never see, she'll be like, Chato, can you get that? Can you clean that? So that's who she is. So there was a time where she put runners down, because she had a carpeted condo, runners down, for where your feet get dirty. Now it began with one in the hallway, and by the time, like, within a year, she must have. Basically, the joke was, you have more runner than carpet, Mom. It's like, what is left to step on? It's so, but for me, I can't now. That kind of joking around has gone away, because one thing I discovered is that she now is very literal. So you have to be very, very literal and specific. Better to say Raphael, my son's name, than he, if I'm doing something, because she may not remember that we mentioned Raphael 20 seconds before. So indefinite pronouns, I don't use those anymore. Her hearing is also very poor. So when we go to Starbucks, her favorite routine, in big 24-point type, I have a file called Mom Notes, and it's just our conversation. So typing, somehow, at least in my mom's case, her ability to process language on the page is a little bit better than it is through her ears, even if when she can hear okay. So that's one. And then really there's Lori, there's the nonverbal world, which is what I've really been getting into and being introduced to with my mom. So when we go, she just has always loved babies, little kids, puppies, and dogs. But now even more so, I think just her love of that is just, it's really coming out even more. There's like and I think this is I want to say one of the lessons that we as caregivers can pick up on, or we can at least just enjoy how much they enjoy simple things like seeing a baby come into the Starbucks, or God, my mom loves chocolate now the way she never did when I was growing up. I mean, she'll go through a bag of Hershey's Kisses or those Ferraro chocolate balls like it's nothing. And power to her, have at it, have all you want. So these little things, like that's a nonverbal thing. But if I buy her chocolate, she understands that's me saying, I love you. And let's spend time together. Or I will pull up YouTube videos of, like I said a second ago, puppies and kids or kittens, or ideally, and you can just you can say, you can punch in because I've done it, kittens playing with babies. And so you get both in one picture. And my mom just will sit there and she'll laugh. I mean, she'll just be delighted. And then she'll say stuff that it's really great. I can see flashes of the old her. I think this somehow, because this stuff is connecting with her, she'll say something like, the dog knows to not hurt the baby. Like she understands these universal things that are really beautiful. And in those moments where I'm sitting there watching little videos, I'm like, yeah, I like the videos too. And I'm normally kind of too rushed and busy to do something like spend 20 minutes watching cute YouTube videos. But my mom has kind of forced me to slow down. So in those moments, I think I'm actually benefiting too. So we have the visual stuff. We have candy and decaf lattes. And then, I mean, to just really put a fine point on it, when we're driving down to go somewhere, if she does it, puts her hand on mine, or I put my hand on hers, I mean, that's huge. That is a huge way to communicate. Where basically, I guess what I'm getting at, Lori, is I've discovered that where maybe reason and intellect go away, feelings don't go away. The capacity to feel how you feel and to intuit how you're feeling, that stays. So even where I feel like, God, it's tough because I want to talk to my mom, I want to have a normal conversation, but it feels so stilted and weird, and that maybe I can't do anymore. But yeah, but I could put my hand on hers and I can get her chocolate. And I know that after the visit's over, I can just see that, she's more energetic and she's happy and it works. So I have to make that adjustment. That's for me to do. But it's been, like I say, it's also been a learning experience. I've learned that don't over rely on your old habits. If language was your thing, it's not the only way. So those are a couple of things that I've discovered along the way with mom.
So, you're talking about adjusting and how it kind of filled your mom, those little things, holding her hand and having chocolates and stuff. How did it make you feel though when you left?
Better, because it was part of my evolution. I think, in the beginning, especially, I was so stuck on my old image of mom and so frustrated. So we would have pointless arguments. And here I have to blame myself. I do blame myself because, so if she would say, she was convinced that a caretaker at her home had stolen her reading glasses for the third time. And I know that's not the case because I found them in other places. She misplaced them. So, but for me to correct her and say, no, that didn't happen, she'll just look kind of confused. And I think underneath it, she also understands that I'm dismissing her. So now I'll say instead something like, you know what, let me look into it. Yeah, I'll look into that. But hey, in the meantime, you want to get a coffee now? And she, at least then, I think she feels validated, like he's not dismissing me. And maybe in that moment, it takes away her worry that this won't be solved, the case of the missing reading glasses. In the end, either I'll find them or I'll go to CVS and buy another pair. There's going to be a solution. But why go through the antagonism? Why go through or when she calls me by her brother's name, Joe, who passed away 25 plus years ago, yeah, I can correct her, or I can just wait for the next sentence where more than likely she'll come back and remember that I'm her son and call me Chato. It's like, what is the fight for? Like, it's an empty victory. So it's like letting go of that is, to me, part and parcel of also letting go of language and understanding that chocolate and touching her hand might be way more effective anyway than trying to joke about how many runners she has in her condo. You know what I mean? It's like, so those adjustments and the reason I think I feel better is that, first of all, I don't have the knot in my stomach because we've had a tense interaction. I see that she's happy, and I skipped an argument that didn't need to happen. So it goes both ways, the feeling.
Yeah. I always found that I walked away feeling more joyful and peaceful when I knew she was peaceful and joyful. And that was something that I didn't really recognize earlier on, that when she was irritated, then I was irritated when I left, and frustrated. And so once I kind of grasped that made life a lot easier. You had talked about the glasses. My mom used to lose her purse all the time. Someone stole her purse. And so we would buy, 2 to 3 purses, all the same. And we would just tell the nursing staff, they kind of had a drawer and they'd pull it out and go, we found this, in the room, or we found this in the dining room. And she would just be so happy. And then the other person would show up and they would just tuck it in the drawer, but we always had this backup. And we learned that was just something she was going to do. The one we never were able to work around was my mom. Our whole family has allergies. So it's like we always have a Kleenex in our hand, it's like something's triggering us with our sinuses and allergies. Well, she would go around and she would nab everybody's Kleenex box. Well, once you take a Kleenex box, you can't give it back in a community. So my mom, we could do, sure. We could have like building blocks out of her Kleenexes, and so that was the one we could never really work around with her on that one. But, and you have to kind of laugh at some of those things and just go, okay, what's going to make this easier on everyone? And like staff would get really irritated because she would get upset and then they would feed off one another with that whole thing. And so, like I said, purchasing an extra purse or two just did the trick for us. And people would go, yeah, but that's not telling the truth. And I'm like, but it's not telling a lie. It's still her purse. It's nobody else's.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do, I also feel like, and I mentioned it in the book, a character comes up with a phrase, fiblet, like a little lie. And I do think, yeah, of course, I want to be a good guy and not lie in life. But I think I've discovered certain white lies are actually better. They are a form of compassion, especially when there basically are no stakes besides the emotion of your mom and your emotion, like we were talking about. So there's characters in my book who were like, yeah, I lie left and right. It's the greatest thing ever. and it's about these smaller things where you're just sparing some anguish. It's one of the things that people learn along the way. And yeah.
That's a good way to put it. You're sparing them the anguish. And bringing the calm to them. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask was, do you look like your uncle, who she would mistaken you for once in a while when he was maybe younger?
Barely. He had a mustache. I have facial hair, but not really. He had a kind of round face with glasses. So I don't know why she happens to call me Uncle Joe sometimes. I can't put it together. Maybe she just misses him because her other brother, John, is still alive. So maybe I think she just maybe misses Joe a bit more and he's on her mind. And just sometimes she does that.
Well, my mom used to call my older brother her brother. And he would get so frustrated. And I'm like, Mark, look in the mirror. He was like the spitting image of my uncle when he was younger. But, sometimes you had talked about, the nonverbal. Sometimes it's just the feeling of comfort that they had with that person. And so it's a compliment. Like my mom used to call me her mother. And so when I would come in to visit, she'd be sitting with her friends and she'd go, and there's my mother, and she takes such good care of me. And then there was one woman who wasn't kind of in their clique, and she would always scream out, Dorothy, that's not your mother, that's your daughter, And then her group would kind of cackle, and my mom goes, oh, I've got Alzheimer's, and then she just kind of blow it off and could still have that joke. And that really frustrated my brother because he's like, okay, you told me, mom's probably thinking of me as her brother because I look like her, but you don't look anything like grandma. And I said, mom's healed her relationship with grandma. Sometimes it's looking at it in a different perspective. Like my mom's dad died when she was 15. And my grandma, word on the street, was she had a nervous breakdown and she just took off and she kind of traveled the world and left my mom home alone at 15. Oof. And so my mom had some issues with abandonment. And I just think, and this is what I told my brother, how lucky am I that somehow our relationship helped that heal. Now she loves her mom and she thinks her mom takes great care of her.
Wow. That's an incredible story. That's a story I've not yet heard, that whole idea that by mistaking you for somebody that somehow it's almost like role playing, or she's working out these issues and you can be the mom that wasn't. That is like you talk about an unexpected silver lining to dementia and mental issues. That is, well, I think what you just said is massive. And it just, Yeah, that's a really really big one. Boy, I can't. I mean, I just think of in my life little things like I'm trying to like when my mom, especially in the beginning, when she could no longer follow the med checklist, she was obsessive and would bother the med techs. They were on a schedule, they knew when to bring it, but she just wouldn't trust them,
Mhm.
and it made me crazy. I was like, it was just my own kind of shame, like, oh, don't bother them. It's like asking
Mhm.
the waiter too much for something. Don't do that. It was I was embarrassed. They didn't care. They do this for a living. They didn't really care, but I was embarrassed. I was projecting myself on her. But at some point, I just think I realized, oh, wait a minute. Mom just saw her husband die of kidney failure. She's up there too. She's in her age. She's tomorrow, but I think, oh, don't we mention tomorrow's my mom's birthday. Yay. She's turning 85. I'm going to get some kind of chocolate cake and we're going to have a little celebration. So whoop, whoop to that. But anyway, she's up there. And when I think about it, I was like, wait a minute, maybe she's just worried about her health. Like she saw her husband die. I mean, she's like, I just want to make sure I stay healthy. And so I'm kind of guessing that when I translated the annoyance of her constantly nagging me and the workers about her meds, and I wasn't nice about it, snapping back at her like, don't ask them, they'll know it. You already just asked that, all the stuff that we do. And when I realized it's probably just worry about her health, I'm like, okay, well, maybe what can I do to calm her health besides? And then I could just say, oh, good news. And I would say stuff like we'd have a doctor visit, and the doctor would say, and I would just pass on. I get great news. Dr. So-and-so said your heartbeat is totally fine. You are in great shape. And that would bring the calm that me, you know, just getting on her back about her meds, that had nothing to do with solving the feeling. The feeling, so,
Yep.
but and I should say, and I want to point this out, and I'm sure most people feel this way, is the stuff that I'm telling you, where I feel like I've maybe picked up a trick here or there, like this has been a grueling and painful learning curve. Like I do not profess to be some, Buddha caregiver on a mountaintop, dispensing advice. It's not like that at all. I'm here because I'm a total work in progress. I stumbled on these things. I behaved and still do have very bad days where I feel like I'm short with her and I'm not patient at all. And I anyways, the point is, I just want to emphasize, like, this is not like a complete how-to. We're just talking. We're just talking about how it really is and things we do. I mean, in my case, therapy consisted of writing a novel. For someone else, it might be walking in the garden, going to the movies. I don't know, binge watching TV, eating your favorite food, whatever your thing is to cope. So anyway, I just want to point that out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, those are great things to point out. What advice would you wish you would have received upon, stepping into this role of caregiver?
Being prepared and willing to enter their reality.
Mhm.
This kind of goes under the compassion umbrella. So it's trying as best I can to understand the world the way they might see it. I mean, it's hard to do, but it's like, so with hanging on to the shoes, what did that mean? It means I want my freedom. Well, how can we still accommodate freedom? And then whether it's the tennis balls, it's entering reality. What that means is you have to be willing to pivot. So when you think, like I say, I like to have things fixed and done. Don't rest on that. Just take the day as it comes. Take mom. Mom is going to have different days. Mom will be so there'll be days where she is sharp as a tack and really funny and on point, and other days where it's not like that and it's harder to get through. And as long as I can kind of say, okay, well, where is she coming from? Because since I have a little bit more of those kinds of faculties maybe intact, like go into her place. Don't have the arguments you don't need to have, like about your brother or about where the reading glasses were taken. But that requires imagining that you're in her position where you don't actually know what happened to the reading glasses, and maybe you do guess that someone took them. So it's about really being able to enter the reality, and it's a little bit harder thing to do, but it's just about the compassion of it.
Well, it's just such a foreign route because we're taught right or wrong. Everything is right or wrong, and it's not about someone's perception. That's not what we're taught, and so it's a very, very foreign concept. It's kind of like fiblets. If you are raised in a house where you don't lie, or your religion says you're not supposed to lie, then that's a really, really tough line to cross for many people because all my life this is what I've been taught to do, and I don't understand. And so it really is about having these conversations about, it, you can argue with them, but you're not going to win because they're not going to give up. That's going to, they're going to keep pushing it because they can't process the right for wrong. It's in their mind. They've done it this way all their life. They know when their doctor's appointment is, or they know when to take their medications, or how to dress themselves. And so how dare you tell me I can't do that, or I don't know, or that I've forgotten. I mean, that's what I found with my mom. My mom got to the point where she, wearing a bra just really frustrated her. We tried every which way. She couldn't clasp it in the back. We tried in the front. Finally, I got her. I mean, we tried all different types of things, pullovers and stuff, and she just couldn't do it. So finally, I got her to wear a camisole. Well, that didn't give her any support, and it's just like, Mom, it's okay. At this point, it's really okay. And it took me months, to get here in this plate. And then one day we were at the lake, and my mom said, "Oh, I really need new bras." And my sister-in-law goes, "Oh, I'll bring you." And I was just like, "Oh my God," because she's not hearing every day the frustration. And I took her to the side, and not my mom, but Deb, and it's like, "Why did you do that?" You don't know, but I didn't tell anybody. They didn't know. They were just doing a favor. They had no idea. And so then I had to kind of apologize to my sister-in-law, going, "Sorry, I snapped on you," but it was like, this was so much work. And she's like, "Oh gosh, Lori, I'm really sorry." And as much as they can't remember things with dementia at times, like we drove home, I'll never forget, from that weekend. And my mom was mad the whole weekend that I refused to buy her bras. And she sat in the car with a red face and mad and her arms crossed the whole dang time. And, and so it's funny what they hold on to. So, you can't win an argument typically.
So how did you ultimately resolve that? Because it sounds like you were making all this headway. By accident, your sister-in-law sets it back by bringing the idea back to your mom. And now she's thinking it, and like, I want the bra back. Did you end up with bra, camisole, and how did you do it without too much aggravation?
Well, we ended up with camisole because I wasn't going to take her for the bra. And then it was, well, Deb just never got around, to doing it. And so then every time my mom would bring this up to me, I just kind of went down my same old path. And she had forgotten that Deb was going to take her, after a couple of days. She held on to that for about 2 days. And so, yeah, that's how it worked. But it was tough because it's like, I knew a new bra was not going to do the trick at all. It's kind of like the shoes, and then it's just like, and that would frustrate her for half her day. She'd be in a bad mood over her bra. She'd be upset. And it's like, that's not how in anyways, for me, that's not how I want my loved one to feel. And so kind of getting back to everything, I try to do goes back to, how's it going to make them feel? And I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel happy. I want them to be pain-free. Those were kind of my top things. And that I learned after I snapped at my mom one time when she repeated herself, 40 times in 10 minutes. And I didn't think it was cute. And I didn't think it was funny. And then I had that horrendous guilt that you were talking about, and that shame, and thought, I've got to figure out a different way, to prioritize what am I really doing? It's not about the task, it's about the relationship. And to me, that was one of the biggest gifts I think that I learned, because that I apply to all my relationships now.
And this is something you mentioned earlier about how when you asked me, and you also chimed in, how do you feel after when mom has the chocolates or has a good day and you're leaving, how we both kind of feel a little better. That to me is like, well, I can be a cynic and say, well, that's just enlightened self-interest. You made her feel better. But then as my therapist, and I've talked to her many times about mom, would say, well, of course it's enlightened self-interest. Everything we do is for ourselves, but why not enjoy it pinging back to you? So to beat myself up thinking that I'm doing this with some motivation toward feeling better, that's ridiculous. So this is just something, and this does sort of bleed into the character, the main protagonist in the book, is that he is continually beating himself up. Like he does not need an enemy in his life. His interior dialogue will will knock him down in a way that nobody outside ever could. So I think that's another thing caregivers, like I think we all need to work on, is the sort of, because where does it go? I mean, the interior dialogue where you feel worse and worse about yourself. And I still have plenty of those days, but I try once in a while. And sometimes, someone will give me an attaboy and say, no, like at my mom's place, they'll say, well, you visit more than most other kids visit. And so that's a good thing. And they'll point little things out like that. And I'll be like, yeah, but you don't know that I came on that visit resentful that I had to go visit her. but I'll keep that part to myself and try not to let it bleed into how I interact with my mom. That's another thing, Lori, is that even if I'm in a rush day, like I'm busy, but I know I have to see my mom because I put it on the note, because whenever I leave, I put a note on my mom's cabinet saying, I'm going to return on such and such a day. If it gets to be 2:00 even, then I start getting the calls because she's at the front desk asking, when is he coming? When is he coming? Which makes me crazy because I'm going to go. I don't miss anything. However, so I might be irritated and arriving and thinking, oh, mom, stop guilting me. I'll come. But the other thing I do, and sometimes I just literally have to just kind of put on a game face, is leave that at the door and be like, hey, mom, great to see you. Oh, yeah, let's get the coffee, and leave my own little petty annoyance and feeling put out or not appreciated or whatever I'm feeling, leave that at the door, because it's, again, I will feel better. If nothing else, do it for me. I'll feel better at the end of the visit. And that's totally okay. It's okay to do it, because you're also benefiting. It's just win-win. So it's okay.
Well, and I think that's sometimes what is missed. And just the term caregivers, to me says we're giving it all away when this is really relationship based. And so I always tell people, and it's funny because I have like a little tip sheet on this that people can download. But one of the things is do what brings you both joy. And people, like, it's so simple, and they all go like, why didn't I think of that before? So it's a self-interest of maintaining your relationship. And chances are when you arrive, even when you're late, she might not remember that you're late. She's just going to be so happy that you're there. And if she does, then you can say, oh, I'm so sorry, but it was really important for me to get here. And so I would never forget. And then your, topics.
Then you're good, right? Usually. And you're right too, about like the idea of finding things to do together that are maybe different than before. So I don't mind going to Starbucks. I like coffee. That's an easy one. And then if she wants to go to the store afterwards, the supermarket, well, I'll be like, well, you know what? I did forget to get a couple avocados. So, I'll go and I'll do a little shopping for me too. And then we'll meet up we'll go together. I'll help her, and then we'll walk by and we'll grab those avocados. And then really we're both shopping. And whereas I used to think, gosh, mom, this is true. I in the beginning, especially after my stepdad was gone, I'm like, and I said this to her, this is, years ago when her mind was clearer. I said mean stuff like, am I just your errand boy? That's all I'm good for? And I knew that wasn't the case. I knew she loved me, but I was just being mean and spiteful. And that's an example of something that I'm really ashamed of and have to work on. But the point I want to bring by that is, like, I now realize that those errands, now that especially we can't have long chit chats the way we used to, the errand is not the burden, it's the activity of the day. That's the thing we're doing that day. We're going to go to CVS. We're going to go to JCPenney and look for some flat, sensible shoes. Whatever, we're going to go to Target. And when that kind of clicked in my mind this is not just her using me to run an errand. No, this is going to be our point of connection now. And so now I don't, for the most part, I don't feel rushed about it the way I used to. Even if I wasn't in a rush, I would still feel rushed. I would still be annoyed and still want to kind of get it done as quickly as possible. And I felt guilty about that because I think she sensed that energy. But now when I can, I just remind myself, this is the thing. This is what we're doing.
And we're doing it together.
And together, and that's the point. And we're doing it, like, she gets something out of it. She gets the coffee, I get the coffee. We watch, maybe a cute kid comes in that she can fuss over, who, some mom is bringing her kid in for their coffee in the afternoon, whatever it is. And that becomes a thing.
Well, and what's nice is, you pointed out too that, that you are doing it together. So now she's not feeling like she's a burden because you're having a cup of coffee with her. Oh, you needed to pick up stuff at the store too. and it really changes that playing field when you're able to switch from a task to, an activity or an engagement together. I mean, it just changes to me everything. And for me, it was really getting back to understanding what was important and why, the why, and what both of us were getting out of it, once I changed my mind, and realizing too that, if I was on edge or snappy, she's going to pick that up. She's going to
Yeah.
know that I really don't want to be here, or I have other things to do,
Yeah.
or I don't think she's important enough. And then she's going to go back and she's going to be snappy with other people because I ruined her day,
Right.
because they will mirror that stuff back. And but that took a long time for me to figure out too, all of that kind of stuff. What when it comes to, positive feelings, what have you really discovered around the caregiving journey as a whole?
I have discovered that I can learn from my mom in ways that are stuff that I've always felt like I wanted for my life. And so let's just give an example. By my nature, I'm kind of a worrywart. So I will fret over an email I sent yesterday thinking, oh, is the tone wrong? Is the person offended? Then I'll agonize over, maybe should I follow up with a second email, or that just put a spotlight on the first email? Or if I'm looking down the future, I'll be like, oh, there's this bill to pay, and why is it so high this month? That doesn't make sense. Basically, the sort of rumination and anxiety, those two poles are there. But with mom, when we do go to Starbucks, and this blows my mind. We'll be there, and if a baby or a toddler come in, my mom is up on that walker in 2 seconds flat, and she is making a beeline straight for that little kid, and she will just smile and fuss and ask the name if she can't, all this stuff. And sure, people say things, oh, cute kid, and that's kind of a normal thing. But my mom now, with the filters off, like she'll stay there for 20 seconds, 25 seconds, 30 seconds, 35. It seems an eternity when you're basically standing in a stranger's space with their little vulnerable kid. But this is the thing, Lori, like this is a learning lesson for me. And like one of these moments where I feel like my faith in humanity gets restored. No person has ever been like put off or acted weird about my mom. They all intuit something. They just know she is where she is, and they just feel it, and they smile, and they let her fuss as much as she wants over the baby. And it makes my mom's day. And then I'm not sweating that she's being there too long. And this is kind of embarrassing because they don't care. So I'm learning to basically give more credit to people and not be so cynical about, oh, there's sort of social conventions. That's one. And another example, I think even more profound on the learning curve, is when my mom is, enjoying that latte like it was, a cup of the finest champagne or whatever you want to compare it to, or enjoying that chocolate. Like I can just see in her face, she's there and nowhere else. Like she's not fretting about the email. She's not worried about the bill. So I would like to be more, I always say, oh, I want to be more present. I want to be in the moment, because really that's all that we have. The rest either already happened or hasn't happened. So why not be in the moment? And I think we all kind of want to say that. And I think, oh, it sounds kind of new agey and silly, but no, I think there's a lot of truth to it, because that's what we have, is the moment. And I can see my mom is now, and she was, as a younger woman, she was the worrier and fretter, and she planned for everything. So I think I got that from her. But now with the Alzheimer's, that's gone. And she is purely there. And she is the Buddhist master on top of the mountain, fully meditating and fully in the moment. And I could take something from that. So now if I can slow down and not rush and take the time to enjoy that third or fourth or fifth cat video and just enjoy that she's enjoying a baby, like that's something for me to learn. So that to me is like to your question, kind of the positive experiences has been learning that there's stuff to learn. There's stuff to learn from mom. It's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too that I think about, because I used to get like that too, and I'd be embarrassed and, oh, what are they going to think? And, are they going to react? But, especially when it comes to kids, everybody loves to get a compliment of their child. And so you don't know, that mom might be there getting a cup of coffee because she's at her wit's end, and that interaction might have calmed her down. Like, I really need to appreciate my child more too,
Right.
or just I mean, we just never know where people are at. But kindness can't fail, and it has a ripple effect, and that's what your mom was doing. And I think if we put it in that, if we stage it as that instead of out of character, or even out of proper social ways we're supposed to interact because somebody's in someone else's space, I do believe people feel the energy. And granted, every now and then you might get someone who pushes back, but most people understand and they appreciate it, and that person sticks with them during the day.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's kind of one of the themes that you and I are talking about right now today, is this idea of being open to changing your mind and your
Mhm.
habits. Like, we have
Yeah.
certain things that we've always thought to be the case about our parents, and now we're talking about fiblets, and now we're talking about, don't assume that that person is irritated just because you might be worried that they're irritated. Don't assume that, because you don't know, and maybe mom or dad in their action and how they interact will prove to you that you might have been a little bit wrong in your assumption, and that there's room for you to pivot and change a little bit. So I think that's kind of a central theme. I mean, there's I don't want to, this is also not a spoiler, but in the book, my protagonist's son, he's 18, and he's with his dad as they have to go pick up mom from the bank when she's kind of been stranded there, and the dad's fully embarrassed and kind of rushing her out and just wants it all to be over. And the son just kind of, without thinking about it, says, well, dad, she's not broken, she's just different. And it's just like such a simple little thing that an 18-year-old maybe says off the top of their head without thinking too much. But I think in that moment, that is like a massive shift in thinking, if we can get there,
Yeah.
to change, basically, because it's really about changing expectations. We're not, if we're not ask if you expect somebody with dementia to be solving calculus problems and doing your taxes, you might get frustrated. Maybe that's an appropriate expectation if they were an accountant and they were in their 40s and without dementia. So it's not right to put because you wouldn't ask a baby to do anything more than eat, sleep, and go to the bathroom. Like, we're satisfied with that. So in the different stages of life, I think it's fair to adjust our expectations and appreciate what that new stage of life brings to us too, not just to the person. So again, loosening up on the rigidity, being willing to pivot and change what you expect out of a person. It's been a battle, but I'm getting there bit by bit with my mom. And like I say, I'm loosening up and appreciating what she's got to bring to the table.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you for spending so much time with us again today. Always a wonderful conversation with you. Again, we have been talking with Alfredo Botello, and he just has these wonderful insights and just this calm, authentic, refreshing way of stating things that I think helps us all just kind of ponder, maybe I could do something a little bit different, or that happened to me too. Maybe I'll try something different because the old way is not working. He has his book, Spin Cycle Notes from a Reluctant Caregiver. And you can go to his website, which is real simple. And again, we'll have this all in the show notes as well. AlfredoBotella.com. He's on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X or Twitter. And for buying the book, do they go to the website, or, I would imagine it's in the bookstores and on Amazon and stuff too? Is that correct?
Yeah, you can go through the website, but the website ultimately will just the website's good because it has synopses and some other little tidbits if you're interested in the book, and also in my first novel. And there's also, just real quick because it's on topic, I also contributed a chapter to something called Wellness Through Words, and that's actually a direct nonfiction essay about me and my mom. And so that you can, if you want to just sort of know the real deal without any fiction attached to it, you're welcome to take a look. Anyways, yeah, so you can check it out through there. Or you just go click on to, Barnes and Noble or Amazon, whatever your bookseller is. If you punch in Spin Cycle and Alfredo Botello, I'm sure it'll pop up, and it's available in audiobook, ebook, softcover, hardcover. So however you like to take in your novels, it's there for you.
Wonderful. So
Yeah.
thanks again. As always, I ask our audience to be a giver of hope. If you're an individual or a professional, you can download a graphic from our website. We'll have that information for you as well. You can put it on your Facebook, your website, your email. It's just all about sharing our stories, sharing resources, and giving people hope by connecting them to
Yes.
such needed things. So thanks, everybody. Until next time. Bye now.